to Affect Autism, where affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting child development through playful interactions. Get 15% off any DIR 101 course, An Introduction to DIR and DIR Floor Time through icdl.com by using the promo code AFFECTA15. That's AFFECTA15. Hello, I'm Daria Brown, and this week we have Juliana Ross. She is a DIR music therapist and the head of Creative Arts Department at PCDA, Professional Child Development Associates in California. Today we're talking about the unique creative arts programs offered at PCDA, including music therapy, where they emphasize working closely with parents and creating many opportunities within their services to foster the parent-child relationship. All of their music therapists have completed their introduction to DIR, Developmental Individual Differences Relationship-Based Model, and John Carpente's training on orchestrating effective relationships in musical play, a DIR floor time-based music therapy approach for children with on the autism spectrum. And you can refer back to my podcast with John Carpente about music therapy and floor time, which I'll put a link to in the blog post. Welcome, Juliana.
Thank you so much, Daria, for having me. I couldn't wait to do this interview, and so thank you so much.
Christopher Perry, who I sort of met on email a bunch of times, connecting with him and hooking him up with different DIR people, he suggested that we do a podcast together. It must have been a year and a half or 2 years ago, and then with the pandemic and everything, it just kept getting pushed back. So it's great to finally hear about all of these creative arts programs, because there's lots happening, and I'll be eager to hear what was going on, what happened during the pandemic, and what's happening now. So tell us about the Creative Arts Program.
To our surprise, during this last year, we found out that we're actually one of the largest clinics in the US providing DIR floor time services. And we serve over 500, almost 600 families. I work on a multidisciplinary team. Our department is creative arts, and all of the clinicians in our department are board certified music therapists. We have been working endlessly throughout this pandemic, and one of the great things I just want to share during this blog is about all the unique programs that we've developed over the last 5 years. We've not only provided music therapy services, but we have adapted music lessons. We have a adapted notables choir. They're called the Notables. And we also have a drama program that's called the Young Actor Squad, that's led by amazing clinicians and teachers. Not only do we have staff that's certified and trained in their clinical fields, but they also have these extracurricular skills that has allowed them to be able to lead things like the choir, or they've been able to lead drama classes because they take improv on their own. And so being able to replicate that at PCDA has been such a beautiful and unique experience, especially because we're bringing in DIR and the floor time strategies into the work that's being done. So super unique, lots of different components that make this one of a kind, but also I'm here to say, I think everyone should be doing this. And we hope that, parents feel like they can approach these programs with excitement because, there's exciting stuff happening.
What is the population that you serve? Is it just for children on the spectrum, and what age group?
Certainly. So we see children 0 to 25 within music therapy services. We even work with older adults that live in special homes. We do special education classrooms, K through 12. And yes, we do. The majority of our population is children with autism, but we also serve a lot of other children that have global developmental delays or other kinds of disabilities, whether physical or neurotypical. So we've sort of expanded and really just try to, include all families and all children of all abilities and the things that we do. Yeah. So in terms of our programming, one of the wonderful and unique things is that during every music therapy session, we always try to include the family or the parent within the session. And so it's sad to think about it now because we're not in the clinic, but if you were a year ago to walk through our clinic, we have, you can kind of look into the room sometimes, although it's only the clinicians that look in sometimes, that you can see the families gathered on the floor with instruments and we're all just playing together. And so that's already just a really beautiful thing. I think being able to include parents in the sessions and being, obviously the clinicians are really goal oriented, but when you look into the room, there's just fun and play happening. And the clinicians thinking about how are we meeting these social, emotional, developmental goal areas, but the family's not seeing it that way. They're just having fun singing together. And I think that the wonderful thing about having a multidisciplinary team at PCDA is that down the hall, you have a speech session happening, or on the other side, you have OT, the OT gym, and then you have feeding, and this is all happening in conjunction all together. So we actually treat families that are seen by various other departments. The wonderful and great thing about that is we can consult on a treatment team together and really talk about, what we're seeing within all our different therapies, what a child looks like in a music therapy context, and then what they look like in OT and speech. And sometimes you find that there are differences, and then you're figuring out, in OT, they don't have to use as much language, or maybe their bodies are more involved. So it's sort of, you can't really do two things at once. And then in music, you kind of see the marriage of everything coming together. The child is incorporating the skills that they learned, the new words that they started speaking in speech, or the new skill that they acquired in OT. And it's just, like I said, a very unique experience, especially for the parent to be able to see, wow, here's my child in all these different contexts, and I have a team that really understands where they are developmentally on the milestones, what their individual differences are, and how they're meeting those needs in music, similarly as in speech. So those are just a couple of things that I think really set PCDA apart, and creative arts in general, because normally you see music therapy as a standalone service that music therapists provide. In California, I don't really know many programs at all that offer music therapy services within a multidisciplinary team setting the way that we are able to. And so I love the team that we work with. We have such tenured staff. We have speech pathologist, head of speech that's been there for over 10 years. Our clinical director, Julie Miller, who's an occupational therapist, has been there over 15 years. The head of child and family counseling, that's been there for so many years and is incredible. Dr. Brandt, and then Ann Davis, she's like a speech guru, AAC genius. And you have all these things at your disposal, that creates this environment where, you as a music therapist, you really want to push yourself and figure out, how does music therapy fit? Or how does music and art fit into this child's overall treatment? What is the importance and the significance of having something like music in their lives, or having, parents learn how to use music to engage them? And I think for me, it's the affect, it's the fun, I recently attended Perfectum conference, and I was like, what is affect? Like, what, how does music therapy fit again into this idea of affect? And I really think it's they're one and the same. I think that being able to play music with children helps identify all kinds of ranges of emotion, whether they're good and positive or they're sad. And the way that we can interpret that in music is really magical because you don't need words to express that. So if I'm playing like a really grungy chord or like a really dissonant chord, the child can feel that. And it can be mirrored by something that's like they're trying to do or a toy they're trying to get into, this little, they're trying to put together and it's not working. And I can, that affective piece and bringing the music into that. I'm like, oh, it's not working. And strumming on the guitar. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, you understand. You understand. I don't necessarily understand the language and the words, but I can understand the language and the words when it's paired with the music. Oh, that's what that feeling is. And I can call it this. So music, I think, is such a bridge for, I think, a lot of the other services that we provide.
It's really an ideal setting, and it's what's spoken of in the book Engaging Autism by Greenspan and Weider. And it's one of the earliest blogs that I did called What is an Ideal DIR Fuller Time Program Look Like? And it's exactly what you said. It's a multidisciplinary approach with all of the different services under one roof, or at least coordinated in a way that the therapists communicate with each other and they all understand the D, the I, and have that relationship that they've fostered with the child. And having it all under one roof, especially for children on the spectrum who sometimes have a hard time going to new places when they're familiar going to the same place every week. Oh, this week, I'm going to this place, but this week I'm seeing the occupational therapist, and today I'm seeing so-and-so, and I imagine you know them by name because you see the same person every time and you form a relationship, and having that music therapy be part of it is so wonderful. And also what you mentioned when you talked about the music therapy was seeing families. So right away I was like, oh, okay, I expected you to talk about one-on-one with a child and a parent, which you might also do, but you mentioned a group setting, which is also something very fun. And I'll refer people back to a podcast I did with Christy Gozi about doing floor time with siblings in small groups, which wasn't specifically including music, but just in general, that process of floor time within a group setting. And just even a couple weeks ago, talking about DIR floor time summer camps, where Rosemary White talked about it as well. So it's really interesting to hear that. So I'd love to hear more about that too, in the context of not just the music therapy, but the other arts programs you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm so far, I just scratched the surface on music therapy. But yeah, we absolutely love it when families come in and there's siblings involved, and you really get to see the dynamics in the family. It provides so much information about how that child interacts, because these are the people that the child trusts and that they have a relationship with. And so we want to cater that and use that relationship piece, obviously so important that we know about DIR, to be able to address some of those social emotional goal areas. And one of the really great advantages that we have as music therapists that we learn during undergrad and through practicum and internship is how to lead groups. And it's not always easy to meet we have siblings a lot of the time that don't want to do that, or they want to do this. And so there's a little bit of tension or a little bit of friction between siblings. But, when you've been doing groups for a long time and you're facilitating, especially a music group, you learn how to incorporate everyone's ideas and almost create a group goal. So you are focused on the child and creating that experience, but you're also really focusing on what are the needs of the group right now and how do we create cohesiveness. In DIR, how do you create shared attention and engagement? You have to start with, is it motivating? Are they interested? And start there, and everything kind of just builds after that. And there's just a very natural arch to all music therapy sessions with it, which is you always start with a hello song and you kind of introduce, you present an activity for everyone to join in together. Then you might do like a movement-based activities, because as we know, children don't want to sit for the whole hour. So really thinking about, okay, so what are the individual needs of the group? Does it look like people need to stand now? What are the facial expressions on the parents? Are they comfortable? We often tell parents, you don't have to sing if you're uncomfortable, but I always tell parents, your voice is the most motivating, beautiful voice for your child. Even if you think you're singing out of key, that you're the voice they have a relationship with. It's not mine. So, a lot of parents, they're intimidated because oh, well, I can't sing like you guys, or I can't play guitar. And I'm like, that's really not, that's not what it's about. It's about creating these moments, these shared moments together, so that you feel comfortable using your voice and doing the movements together. And so really what we're trying to do with this family piece and the parent piece is we're trying to empower them to feel like they can do that at home, not just in the context of a music therapy session, but at home. And so I've been able to hear from parents that, I just put on music, I put Kids Bop on and we danced around the living room. I'm like, great. That's exactly what we want. You should have permission to do that as many times during the week as you'd like.
I wouldn't mind adding here, I brought this up with John Carpente in our podcast. For people that are listening that maybe are new and are just finding out about floor time and they hear music therapy, they might have the idea that it's about teaching music and getting our kids to be musical, but that's not the focus of floor time music therapy. Like you said, the parents might feel awkward if they sing off key or whatever, but it's not about teaching the children how to play music or lessons. It's about getting that shared attention and having shared joy together and that affective experience, that emotional experience. And some kids might be very musical and they'll go on to learn musical stuff, and other kids might not at all. My son and I love listening to all of his songs that he likes, like the PJ Masks soundtrack songs, and now we're into Mario Kart songs and everything, and he loves to sing along, and I always change the words to match whatever his current interests are. So he started singing, he knew all the PJ Masks songs from the last couple of years, but instead of singing I'm Night Ninja, we're now singing I'm Bowser from Mario Kart, because it's the song about the villain. And he sings off key and he sings off time, and it's not easy for him to keep the beat or anything like that, but we're just having fun together, and it's that shared experience that it's about. And you can add to that or correct anything I may have misspoken of.
No, you're spot on. I think, yes, music therapy is not about learning an instrument, and even, your child doesn't have to be obsessed with music to benefit from music therapy. But I absolutely think that music has this ability to connect in a way that is pretty instantaneous. And it's kind of like a shared language, but without really needing to understand a lot of the language, but rather it's auditory, it's multisensory, really. And so you're almost listening to the same thing. You're connected. You're singing together and in a beat together. There's many studies that music therapy studies that follow drumming groups, and they find that their heartbeats after a certain amount of time when they're drumming together, their heartbeats are actually in sync and their breathing is in sync. And so you think about, the physiology behind listening to music together and that experience, and how you're in sync, in music therapy, it's all about being in sync with the client. And I think, yes, absolutely. what you were talking about singing a song and changing the words to it, and it not being perfect or in the right key. We encourage that all the time with parents, because you can take a song like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and sing about going to the bathroom, and you'd be surprised of how, like, what a great transition song that could turn into, because it's a familiar and predictable, and sometimes going to the potty is scary, but when you pair it with a song that's familiar and you have positive memories associated with it, becomes a whole new experience. So in music therapy, we call it piggybacking. You take an original song and you change the words to it. And that's always fun. I'm actually teaching one of the families I work with how to do that now. And I just send them little clips on, this is a bathroom song, and this is a song, this is Twinkle Twinkle, but how to put your shoes on, and just make it up.
Yeah, I know at my son's nursery school that he had gone to, which was not floor time or anything, but it was specifically for children who had either developmental disabilities, diagnosed or undiagnosed, or some kind of areas of concern. And so they used to use songs for every transition, and that really, really helped my child be able to transition, because transitions are some of the most challenging times for most of our kids.
Definitely. I mean, you'll hear some of our music therapists, again, before COVID, and I can talk about what COVID looks, what telehealth looks like now, but before COVID, you could hear our music therapists singing while guiding the family down the hall, just to be able to it's like a primer to help the child anticipate. And as we know, milestone 2, if you're talking about engagement and being able to engage the client, children really need to be able to anticipate and know what's coming next, so that they feel prepared for that engagement and that interaction. And so music can be such a great part of that. While it is a little bit structured to sing, okay, we're going to sing this song when we go to the bathroom, I still think it's fun to, change, you can always change the affect of a song. It could be fast, it could be slow, it could be loud, it could be really soft if you're trying to communicate a quieter, more calming experience in that moment. So, that's the beauty of that, is you really can manipulate it. And, it seems intimidating because there's so many components, but really once you do, join a music therapy session and you watch the therapist sort of model these things, it makes sense. And you realize that you actually do this when you communicate with people all the time. We often match, when you're standing in front of someone, you often match their posture or their energy. And it's the same kind of thing with music, is you're using what we call the ISO principle in music therapy. It's basically following the child's lead. You're matching them where they're at, and then you're taking them to where you want them to go, right? So you always want to match first and then move to a place of calm. So let's say we're starting really high affect, then you might want to, okay, the music's our hello song is going to start a little bit energetic because we're feeling really tense right now. But then I'm going to slow it down as I sing it. Or maybe the song that I sing after might be a little bit slower. And so I'm going to try to bring it down, not fast, but slowly, because the child needs us to be patient and follow their pacing and read their affective cues and their postural cues to see where they're at. And those are the little things that we try to identify in the session. And, oh, look, Mom, look how he's facing you now. Or, look how calm his shoulders are down. And so you really try to pinpoint those nuances in the session, so that the parent can be more aware and essentially be the leader in the session. The parent is always going to be the leader. So we want them to be the leader at all times, as much as possible.
Right. So tell us about some of the other creative arts programs you offer.
Yeah, so we do adapted music lessons, which, you know, having a child with a disability might make you feel like you can't join typical piano class or a typical choir or a typical art class. And so the purpose of creating something like adapted lessons was for children to be able to learn an instrument with a trained music therapist, but in an adapted way. So let's say your child is really interested in the instrument, but they have a really difficult time sitting in front of a piano for 30 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. It's really hard for them, but we still notice that they have this, they gravitate to the instrument and they really want to learn it, but they don't have the sensory capacities to be able to sit for that long. Well, we incorporate different strategies like teaching an instrument or teaching rhythm on a drum by not sitting at the piano. So you can walk around the room and all of a sudden we're marching to the beat, or we're teaching different rhythms on a drum. So we could take a mallet and I can teach you about how to play eighth notes while playing on the drum. So it's very non-traditional and it doesn't look like your traditional piano lesson. So we want to be inclusive. We want to say, hey, your child can learn an instrument too. And yes, we want to work towards being able to maybe sit and play a 5-minute, 3-minute piece on piano for one of our recitals. And that's the other thing, is we do music recitals at PCDA twice a year that are completely adapted, no pressure. We even have a sensory space, like a backstage performers area. So, if children are feeling scared to go on stage, they can go there. The music therapist is always by their side if they need it. And of course, the parent is always welcome to be in the session and part of the performance, because maybe the child feels safer that way. And so, we're taking all these conventional rules and we're totally flipping them around and saying, hey, it's okay if you want to be in the room. It's okay if you want to choose the next song on piano. Let's have mom choose this next song. Choir is similar. So I should mention that adapted lessons in choir, we're really focusing on more of those musical skills rather than music therapy. But I think by having a music therapist lead these activities, they really have the training and understanding for the child that has autism or the child that has some sort of other physical, challenge that we could figure out how to consult with an OT about, or, and so the goal is to teach them song, but the way you get there is going to look different. It's going to look like a music therapist really has to identify how to break down these steps and create like a program analysis of, okay, how do we get this client from point A to point B in the way that best suits their individual needs and where they are currently developmentally. I'll get to choir. Choir is fantastic. It's amazing. Our teachers is Sarah Martinez, Anna Needham. They are the A-team of choir teachers. It all started out because we got Dr. Diane Cullinane, when she was at PCDA, she got asked to maybe put together a group of children for our 4th of July spectacular at the Rose Bowl. And she was like, well, let's make a choir. So she came to me and I was like, oh boy, how do we do this? So, I presented it to the team, and at the time, Sarah Martinez, one of our music therapists, was there, and Anna Needham was fresh out of internship, a music therapy internship, and they're like, we'll do it. So we recruited a group of 10 kiddos that started to rehearse in our small conference room and they started to sing Star Spangled Banner. And we had, varying abilities. We have children who, I shouldn't even say children, we have a teenager who was like just singing every single word in the song beautifully, great voice. We had other children who were nonverbal that were like, yeah, let's make this happen. So they would hum along, and then they got to wave the flag. So the way that the choir looked, because of the families that wanted to join and the children that were there, were like, there are no rules. Any child can join. The whole idea is for us to be as inclusive as possible. And the goal is for the music therapist to try to figure out how to make it happen and how to create a performance based on the abilities of these children. And so it was very successful. We did the 4th of July Spectacular for 3 years in a row, which is kind of a huge stage for anyone really. And then you have this group of like 10 kids that have never been in a choir before. We've had kids that were turned away from being, or I shouldn't say turned away, but maybe discouraged from joining a traditional choir at school, or they just didn't have the individual support to be able to join a program like that. And so we're like, we have to keep this alive. We have to continue this. And so from that 4th of July performance, the choir was born. They're called the Notables. And since then, they've done such amazing things out in the community. They've been part of the Eclectic Music Festival, our Pasadena Playhouse block party, and they perform at some of our fundraisers for PCDA. And so it's a performance group, really, is what it is. And if you've ever been in band, or if anyone's ever experienced performing, there is such a rewarding experience that comes from being able to perform for people and for your family, and for them to be able to see you on stage and clap. And that is just an extra piece to this whole thing that I think has really built a community at PCDA and within creative arts. We have all these families that join the choir every year, even through telehealth. We're somehow managing to lead a choir, and they just come back every year, and they're always excited to join and learn new dance routines. And if you watch the first video of the choir till now, you're going to see a huge growth. So we're just delighted at what this department's been able to accomplish, and the support that we get from our entire PCDA staff is also great, because they all come to the performances and they get to see the kids that they work with in speech. And they're like, whoa, this is great. Seeing them in a different context is just fantastic. So that's one performance group. And then the last service that we provide is the young adults, our drama program, which is the Young Actor Squad. They came up with the name, which was very much DIR Floor Time-esque, that they came up with their name. And that group is fantastic. I would say that's the newest program that we offer at PCDA. Right now we have a group of 6 teens that are involved. And that is led by Kristen Williams, who's our associate marriage and family therapist. She's in child and family counseling department. So she has this extensive background in improv, and she's fantastic. I've seen her perform, and she's wonderful. And what she's able to bring to the group is DIR floor time, her marriage and family therapy background, although it's not therapy, but she does have just an incredible way with the teens being able to communicate. And of course, her amazing talent at improv. And then the second teacher that we have leading that program is the head of our speech and language department. She's Ann Davis. I talked about her earlier. So she also brings this very amazing perspective to the group, because improv is a lot of communication and communicating. And so she looks at it in a totally different scope. And her working in conjunction with our head of, Kristen, who's associate marriage and family therapist, really provides this unique and specialized experience that I think makes the group super successful. And drama is one of those things that the improv group is one of those programs that it takes what a traditional improv class would provide, which is doing improv like sketch type comedy, but it breaks it down into a more simple format where the teens, the first concept they learn upon beginning the group is yes and. And yes and is a very popular saying with actors and people that do improv, because you always have to follow what the other person says. If they say, "Oh, I'm making a peanut butter sandwich," then you have to say something that's related to that. And if obviously this takes much higher milestones and level skills, but if you're really thinking about it, this is what our teens need. When they're teens, they need to find ways to connect, build bridges, that milestone 5 and 6, and really try to elaborate on those symbolic ideas. And the way that this happens in the group is just, it's so cool. They are so motivated and excited to join, and they're working on all of this, including social pragmatics. So be not just saying words for the sake of saying words, but saying words that have meaning and connect with what's happening in the scene, like getting lost in the woods, and they've done all kinds of scenes together that are just like so funny.
I'll direct listeners to a link in the blog post that the Rebecca listener from the Rebecca School, they had this podcast for a while. I haven't seen a new one in a while, but I think the most recent one that's posted is about improv and DIR floor time, and it's fabulous. It describes what you just talked about in a little bit more detail. So I'll put a link to that so listeners can check that out as well. It's a short podcast. It's great.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's certainly something that I think more people should know about this. More clinics or programs should incorporate this into their curriculum or their programming. It's beautiful to be able to offer all of these programs. Of course, our department does a lot of fundraising and grant writing to make these things possible. It doesn't just come out of thin air, but I think we've had so much support early on from Dr. Diane, Dr. Cullinane. She had this vision to create this clinic that just had all these different components. And, I just talked to you about one department, and we have all these other departments that just, our feeding program is extremely innovative as well, and OT and speech and all the things that are happening. Even in our programs department, we have early intervention services, social skills services, teen club services. And when you look at the clinic as a whole, you notice that your child can start in a programs service like early intervention, building blocks program. And they could probably spend their, first 18 years of life getting different services within one place. And that's great in the sense you have a relationship. You talked about having this relationship with the clinicians, but just having a relationship with the agency and like being able to go to a place you really trust, I think is pretty powerful. And I think it just makes me grateful to be able to share all of that with you and anyone who's listening, because I think we need more things like this.
I know I'm thinking about all of the major clinics in the Toronto area where I am, and just what would it take to make them all floor time based? It would be so wonderful if they could be more floor time based instead of behaviorally based. And it sounds like it, really just takes one dedicated person like Dr. Diane Cullinane was to get it up and going. And yeah, I mean, I think the movement is started towards developmental approaches. Dr. Fader and I talked about that on a podcast before, and you really brought a lot of topics into one podcast, not just the benefits of music therapy and just creative arts in general, but then the aspect of bringing in families and having families be a part of it, which is such a big part of floor time, if not the most important part of floor time, since it's parent mediated. And then also the idea that we spoke about earlier of the clinic, where it's all housed under this umbrella of DIR floor time services, where everyone's speaking the same language and understanding all of that. And yeah, it's wonderful. And I had spoken to a couple of people in another podcast, Donnie Welch and Tanya Steinfeld from the Rebecca School, called Art with Heart, I think it was called. And they spoke about their arts program that they did during the pandemic, where they just drew or did crafts or things like that online. And just all of these programs are just so wonderful for our children who, like you said, are sometimes shut out of the mainstream programs. And even if they aren't shut out and they're welcome, as parents, we don't feel good there. I spoke years ago in a blog post I did about my son's experience going to and I don't even remember what it was. It was some kind of toddler group. And, he just wasn't interested. He kept running out of the room. And, the parents are like looking at me like, why is he running away? Like, or, oh, that mom, it's hard for her. She can't keep control of her child, or whatever you perceive that other people are saying about you. And it's just an unpleasant experience. And so having these groups that are more inclusive and just more understanding of DIR and the individual differences and our kids' sensory profiles, it's just such a different experience for families. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that too, as a parent, because we always want to make the parent feel comfortable and never ashamed or ever feel left out, because every child's got, their moment. And we try to make it as inclusive as possible. And I think I didn't get to talk about it too much, but during the pandemic, I think it really, this time really, it showed us how much of a relationship we have developed and how much clinicians, really dedicate so much to the families, and you build relationships by listening. And I think that during the pandemic, it really was about listening to one another and what was happening, and everyone was kind of off. I mean, even our team, we're having to transition everything to computers and electronics, and that whole process, I think, just made those relationships even stronger. And I could even see them getting stronger with the children as well. Not to mention, this is the perfect modality to coach, because we literally can't be there. So coaching is like a whole other thing that, I think we've been able to work on even more, as we can't be as hands-on. No other choice. And really using everything at home, right? So OTs didn't have a gym, music therapists didn't have instruments to give, we only had our guitars at home. And so really having to come up with some different ways to engage the child using the things that they had at home, or sometimes not using anything at all, and just having the parent there doing movement or rocking with them or singing a song using finger plays. You really get creative, and it's great because it teaches the parent to be creative. You don't need all these toys. You just need yourself. Like, you're the toy. And I think what makes you the most exciting toy is bringing in that affect and that range in your play, in your body, in your voice. And, that is just so connects with music, because music has such a range. And so, it's really a great partnership of those things.
Right. And if people want to learn more about some of the things we've spoken about, look at affectautism.com. You can do a search for PCDA or Juliana, and you can look at today's blog post this week. And I'll have links to a bunch of these things I've mentioned. And I'm just thinking of some of the pandemic topics podcasts that I've done, like with Dave Nelson in Atlanta about online schooling, how they transitioned to online at Threshold Community Services, and another one I did with Morgan Weissman about different kinds of online things they've done at the Rebecca School. So I'll put links to all of these things and links to, before we go, I'm going to share my screen for the PCDA website that people can look up, pcdateam.org. And do you have a special thing under here, creative arts under services, and there we are, music therapy, adapted music lessons, adapted art classes, creative arts summer program. I don't know if your summer program is happening.
It's on a slight hiatus, but we will be back when everything's settled.
Yeah.
And we're not in the middle of a pandemic, but that is a whole other program that we offer for children who can't join conventional summer camps. So you guys can.
And you can see there's a video here, there's pictures. And so that link will be up as well at affectautism.com to PCDA. So thank you so much, Juliana, for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to say our team loves your website. It's, as clinicians, we go there just to gain clarity, because sometimes it's a lot of information, but the way you organize your information is fantastic. And it really helps us as clinicians to be able to communicate with parents what we're trying to do. So thank you for creating Affect Autism.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope that parents get a lot out of it. Just different topics each week on how to use floor time with your children in your lives at home, and all the different services that are available. I always feel for the people that see these podcasts and say, there's nothing like that where I live. But again, that's where the virtual comes in, and also people that are aspiring. I always hope like maybe there's some university students listening and they think this is what I want to do for a living, and then they open up a floor time clinic in their city. I'm always hoping we can, pick up, one person at a time to jump on the developmental approach train and continue to provide these kinds of wonderful services for families.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you for all you do. Thank you to everybody at your clinic, and thanks for this podcast today.
Thank you, Daria.
Until next time, here's to affecting autism through playful interactions. If you're a caregiver looking to implement your own floor time approach, please check the ICDL parent website at the Interdisciplinary Council on Development and Learning for a virtual floor time consultation or for the weekly parent support meetings. We aim to help you implement your program at home using the Developmental Individual Differences Relationship-Based Model, or DIR, taking into account your child's developmental level, their individual differences, and using your relationship with them to help promote and support their development.